Well, welcome back. And, of course, we've all been very concerned about what's going on in Israel. There's now a temporary, I shouldn't say temporary, there is a ceasefire agreement between Israel and Gaza there with Hamas and the Palestinians. And we are praying that it holds, but it has been also described as being fragile. Very honored to have with us today Marc Provisor. He is the Director of Security Project at One Israel Fund, and you can go to oneisraelfund.org is their website. There's a picture of the landing page, oneisraelfund.org. Marc, good to see you. How are you, friend?
Thank God. Very good. And you?
Thank you. Doing well. First of all, what is One Israel Fund? What do you guys do?
One Israel Fund is an organization that's really focused on Judea and Samaria, the heartland, the homeland of our people. And they work with every concept you can to better the lives, whether it be communities, social needs, and so on. And my focus is on the security projects to prevent terror, keep people safe.
Okay. You just returned from Israel. I want to hear about your experience there, but what's your feeling of the current ceasefire?
Well, I didn't return from Israel. I actually live in Israel.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Are you there now?
No. I came to the States for about a week and a half.
Okay. Sorry about that. Got that mixed up. Sorry about that. But,
absolutely.
So anyway, what's your feeling about the ceasefire?
That it's temporary, like they've all been. The unfortunate what's going on, it's not just the ceasefire with Gaza that's happening now, but we're seeing an uptick all over the country, also in Judea and Samaria, my area. I don't know how long this will hold. I wouldn't be surprised if it's short-lived. But right now, Hamas is pretty much working to rebuild their weapons, their system. So we'll see. We'll see.
How bad were they damaged?
They were damaged. They were damaged very bad. But even though the amount of buildings and their subway system, if you will, they still have plenty of rockets left. This is not an organization that values human life. So they will keep it up.
Okay. Do you have any idea what sparked this out first?
Yeah. Palestinian elections.
Okay. So are they divided? Is there a civil war going on within the Palestinians? Is that kind of what's going on here?
Well, we had a civil war going on in Gaza, which Hamas killed a number of the Palestinian authorities, and they took over. Very simple. They would like to do the same thing in Judea and Samaria, which is one of the reasons why the PA chairman, Abbas, created reasons why they can't have the elections and so on. And then they start using all sorts of excuses. They started saying about the Al-Aqsa Mosque. They're saying how Israel charged it, of course, without mentioning that there were attacks and people coming up there to pray, the Muslims coming up there to pray, were throwing stones and attacking the Jews praying underneath. So they didn't mention that. The area of Sheikh Jarrah, which is in Jerusalem, which is basically a real estate deal where the tenants haven't been paying rent for 50 years. So they use that as an excuse. Anything to promote violence. That's pretty much what they're about.
Is it pretty certain that they are continuing to be funded from Iran?
It's absolute. It's a known fact that this is just part of their funding, mind you. You'll forgive me if I'm not tact is not my strong point, but UNRWA, there's a lot of money that comes in from various places that fund Hamas. And you would think that, first of all, let's not confuse Hamas with the Palestinian people. You have to remember, Hamas is really oppressing Gaza. And if they were really for their people, they would want to upgrade their quality of life. They wouldn't be using this money for rockets. They wouldn't be using this money for terrorism. They would try to build. But that's not the case right now.
How safe is it for Israelis these days in Judea and Samaria?
When I was operational, people would ask me, they'd say, is it safe today? Is this all right? Everything is safe until it's not. It's just a reality. Currently, there are various riots from here to there. There are attacks that go on. though not as, let's say, high quality on their end. There are a lot of attacks that are stopped. We have a strong army. We have a stronger people.
Yeah.
And we're working very hard to keep it as safe as we can.
Do you have any idea, Mark, how this present ceasefire came about? I mean, over here, President Biden's kind of taking credit for it. Do you know how this one, who actually brokered this one? Do you know?
It's a combination between Biden, the Egyptians, and Hamas wanting a ceasefire, because they did take a very hard hit. And they started saying that they were ready for it and that Israel wasn't answering. I think it was Hamas asked for it more. And obviously, President Biden was using his pressure on Israel and a lot of the Democratic Party to start pressuring Israel. But behind the scenes, we did achieve incredible amount of goals, not enough, but that's the way it is for now. And again, it's a repetition. We see this every few years.
Given the direct link that you mentioned of Iran to Hamas, how has this impacted this Laos outbreak? How has it impacted the Abrahamic Accord and the peace agreement there in the Middle East? Will it strengthen it or weaken it?
Something that was very interesting. We see a lot of people who are coming out against Israel, yet the Gulf states were very interesting, quiet about it. They know who Hamas is. In fact, besides the Gulf states that right now we're in this Abrahamic Accord, whereas they would like peace in the region because it does serve everybody well, there was an interesting phenomena that the PLO, Fatah, started saying that they wanted to get involved also. Now you have to remember, the Fatah, the PLO, and Hamas are bitter enemies. So they started calling, but in the name of elections, you get more votes if you kill more Jews. So they started calling people out, and not a lot of people showed up. You have to remember, a lot of the Palestinians are interested in moving forward and understand that. So you're not seeing as many Arab countries coming out against this conflict between Israel and Hamas. Of course, most of the people coming out live outside the area and have been victimized of this, I like to call it premeditated ignorance, this manipulation of information that is simply perverting the truth.
Boy, that's powerful. Okay, so I don't know if we here in the West understand the rivalry that's gone on for centuries between the Shiites and the Sunnis and how that plays into the peace accord. But at the end of the day, the common enemy seems to be Iran.
Correct.
Could that pull Saudi Arabia in and more agreement with Egypt?
Saudi Arabia is playing it safe for right now. They haven't entered into the accords. They very much know that Iran is the bad guy in the area, and obviously we see this from Bahrain and Dubai. They're also watching the way the American administration is acting, and the American administration is working towards Iran again, and this is scaring the Gulf states because they don't think that they're going to get the American support against Iran. So it's the Gulf states are being very careful. I think, and forgive me, this is an opinion, they don't think that they can trust America at this point to come across this enemy. They're trusting Israel more with technology, and I'm not saying they're any great friend of Israel, but they see that this is a win-win situation to have peace with Israel, which all would. But that's the game that's being played right now.
Yeah, you're bringing out some good stuff. All right, let me take a quick break. Marc Provisor is with us. He's the Director of Security Projects there with One Israel Fund. That website is oneisraelfund.org. We'll be right back. Well, welcome back, and delighted and honored to have with us today Marc Provisor. He's the Director of Security Projects at the One Israel Fund. You can go to oneisraelfund.org. That is their website. He's in the United States. He lives in Israel and giving us an update. Thank you for your time, Mark. You're fascinating. You know, I don't know if we really understand all the dynamics, but one of the things we watched with amazement was the strategic response of Israel to Hamas. It was amazing and surgical in nature, where you could take out a building among buildings, tunnels among tunnels. And not only that, with pre-warning, get out, we're coming in, so to speak. I mean, it was like, if there's a way to respond militarily to an enemy, Israel certainly has laid out the way it should be done. But I can't imagine that Hamas thinks for a moment they have that kind of intelligence on the other side.
I think they were totally surprised by the efficiency of the bombings. And like you said, you know, buildings would fall and most of the surroundings was left unharmed to an extent. I think this caught them by surprise also. I think a lot of this is also due to our present chief of staff, who realized that we can't play around right now. We have to work to getting the job done. They did not expect that. They also, the ploy that the IDF used, that the world press is so angry at, you know, when we reported that ground troops were moving in, and which was used to destroy our enemies. Of course, that's not allowed on Israel's side. You know, right. We're not supposed to win. Yeah. So it was good. It was good. I mean, good. I look. You have to understand. I hate war.
Yeah.
I'm a veteran. I've fought. I'm a combat soldier. I hate war and violence more than you can imagine, which is why I work hard to prevent it. But they were surprised. Yeah. They were surprised.
Yeah. Okay. In the meantime, the nation of Israel is kind of fragile in leadership. I mean, you guys are heading towards election number 6.
Five.
Okay, sorry, 5. All right. So, did this recent conflict strengthen or weaken Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu?
I don't think it had necessarily an effect regarding the conflict. If there's anything that may have strengthened him, it's what was happening inside the country. The conflict, again, remember, the simple fact that the response was who it was based on the chief of staff, or them allowing him to get the job done, as much as they would allow. The nice thing that we saw was the lack of attack, inter-party attack, that they did unify, and the politicians did something that was rare. They shut up, and they let the army do what it was supposed to do. We'll see. We'll see. I mean, God forbid that we get another elections, but you could be right.
Okay, but you point out something very interesting here, because under attack, you know the purpose and the power of coming together.
Absolutely.
Is there a faction politically in Israel that would have not responded the way you currently did?
I don't think so, and I'll tell you why. Obviously, we have things that are divided between right and left and so on. A left-wing government would have to prove that they are security-minded, where a lot of times in today's world, it's the right-wing governments that have to prove that they know restraint. So it would be an interesting balance. If there was a party in control, I think if the Arab Party was in control, that wouldn't have happened. Mm-hmm. I think if some of the extreme left-wing parties were in control, that wouldn't have happened. But I don't think we would have seen a difference between the left and right.
Okay. So is Bibi fatigued to the point where he may not win number 5?
Well, when I have the next conversation with him, I will address that.
I won't put you on the spot. I'm just trying to feel my way around a little bit here.
I try not to voice my political opinions in public.
Nope.
I'm not a big fan of what's going on now.
I'll respect that. All right. The other thing that we noticed over here is that some certain portions of our news media was certainly going along with Hamas declaring victory. As ridiculous as that is. But nonetheless, they're standing out there going, yay, we won. How do you view that?
Victory is a relative term. It is a point of view. If Hamas, basically, they figured that they're victorious because we did not come in and destroy them totally. In that sense, they are victorious. Now, what I'm saying now is not derogatory. Within the Arab world, and we see this throughout the history of Israel's wars, how do you say, to make things more extreme, to exaggerate, is a constant. Remember, it was how many times the Arab armies reported that they were in Tel Aviv. 73, they still have a victory march. Now, we won in the end, but what was their victory is that they surprised us. What was the victory for Hamas here? That missiles did hit, that the Iron Dome wasn't 100%, that they killed a few Jews. But if you take pictures of Gaza and look at the destruction, the lack of electricity, everything that happened, most normal people would say not exactly a victory. Yeah. So remember, they have to do this because it excites and incites more, which is one of the reasons why we're seeing an uptick in terror in Judea and Samaria, because they're saying we were victorious. So I like to look at them and say, well, if this is victory to you, let's wait and see what losing is.
What did you learn from this recent conflict about the Iron Shield?
We learned about it, what we call it the Iron Dome, actually.
Iron Dome, excuse me. Yeah.
That's all right. It's all in translation. Look, it's not 100%. It's not 100%. I have to mention something that upset me greatly. It was some of the politicians here in America, Talib and the squad, like they like to say. How interesting was they said it wasn't fair that Hamas didn't have Iron Dome.
Yeah, right.
So they would have been happy had there been thousands of Israeli deaths, and that would have been a fair fight. Now, I don't know anyone who tries to fight a war fairly. And this usually happens because most people haven't experienced war. In war, there's one result. You either win or you lose. So this showed me right now that those in that party that were coming out against Israel simply hate Israel.
Right.
And preferred us to lose.
Right.
And that's not going to happen.
I love your resolve. One quick question. I got about a minute. I don't think we understand, Mark, what it's like to live with this constant threat that a missile could come into your backyard. Are people calming down, or they still live with this one eye open all the time?
They live with this one eye open all the time, because if we look over every conflict or every round of this, that when this happens, it comes without warning. There's really nothing that prepares them for it. And it's a trauma that these people hold. And when you go down there, you see it, you feel it. Even when there's not the conflict happening, let's say, or when it's quiet, you feel a certain tension, not just within people, but you feel it in the air, because it can happen like this.
Yeah.
And you're talking about people. Remember, it's amazing. They think, should I take a shower now or not? This tension rules their lives.
Yeah, gosh, I don't.
And it will only go away when we either defeat Hamas or when the Palestinians decide, hey, let's work together with these people for a better life. When they decide to better their life, things will calm down.
Thank you, Mark, for your time. We'll get you back.
Pleasure.
We'll even Skype you in from Israel. OneIsraelFund.org is his website. You can go there, check out his work, and support him. OneIsraelFund.org. You're fascinating. Thank you for your time. And
Thank you very much.
Let's get connected again. Thank you.
You got it.
God bless.
Amen.